Hello, today is the 28th of March and it's our weekend review slash preview of what's happening in the market. And as always, I'm going to go through the charts and try to tie them to fundamentals of what's happening in the world and in the economy. So potentially we could make some sense of it and maybe even do something actionable. So with that being said, let's just cut right to the chase. I always like to start with Bitcoin, actually, because for me personally, it's the most sensitive, the most forward-looking market right now and in a foreseeable future. So that's why I always start my day looking at it. And it's kind of funny because I just wanted to call today's presentation with something like this. Will we be able to produce a headline that is strong enough to make markets chop again? And I don't know. I didn't see any headline so far. No apparent breaking news, but maybe they will surface as I speak. Maybe I'll check one more time. But something could be happening here. In my opinion, we saw a change of character on Friday, and it was a breakdown here, a breakdown through this ascending trend line. And this whole picture is more or less is a bear flag. It could be a bottom here, because for some time, if you remember our previous discussions, or maybe it was in my X/Twitter, for some time Bitcoin and the rest of the space, the new finance, the centralized finance, whatever you want to call it, showed some relative strength, especially in the wake of the war, of the US-Iran war. And obviously it should have been quite obvious. A big war, even aerial war without ground invasion, with a large oil producer will inevitably drive oil prices up, and that in turn will increase inflation inevitably with time. And that in turn will prevent Federal Reserve from lowering the rates, and this will suppress valuations across the economy and the markets. And of course, the more, as I've said, the most sensitive of them all, of these assets, is Bitcoin and Ethereum and derivatives, like all the coin and protocols out there, with very few exceptions. And it wasn't the case here. It wasn't the case up until this moment, when this breakout of this supposed bottoming base failed, and it was a swing failure pattern, when this line became the resistance during this day, and it just followed through to the downside, and now it's breaking down. So that trade didn't work, obviously, and for some time we've been here these 2 weeks, and it was chop. It was not a decisive move, so no apparent breakdown in price. And that's because the attention of people and markets are just groups of people interacting with each other, exchanging assets and receiving value for it, is not sure, or was not sure, because when each day you see conflicting messaging from representatives of Iran and the states, you don't really know what to think about it. Like, what's going to happen? And in conditions like this, even the macroeconomic releases lose their relevance, because these are lagging numbers, and the macro regime can just change overnight with the new headlines related to the war. And obviously, it's quite obvious. Some say that it's confusion, and maybe it could be just a confusion and lack of planning, because Iran is a decentralized force, and you can hear confusing statements, mutually excluding statements, and even actions from them. And some attribute the same qualities to the states in current environment as well. So, in my opinion, what's happening now is that, it's like in personal communication. When you really want to hear some clarification from somebody, and time goes by, and this day and hour it's this, and the next day and hour it's that, and sometimes it's very different few times during the day. What happens? You tune out. You just cannot perceive this source of information anymore. And what do you do then? You resort to the facts of what's happening. And what is happening is not very good. And maybe the market is just waking up to the reality of fundamental factors that were and are piling up, and most of them are not very good. So that's why the change of character. That's why the decisive move on good volume. And so far, I've checked, and I will check once again because it changes so fast. Do we have any news? Nothing. So that could be just a technical bounce here, and it's absolutely okay to have these bounces every once in a while. You can see it's not just bursting to upside. So probability of it being just a technical bounce increases. So no apparent news today. And what are the fundamental factors that are maybe starting to be priced in the markets? As always, my presentations are quite convoluted, but you will find meaning in it as it progresses. So let's take a look at oil. The oil doesn't seem to think that it's about to end soon. I mean, the supply crunch. And with the, I think it was the Houthis who announced their involvement in the war now. It could get worse. And what do we see? It's flirting with $100 again. And that affects everything. The higher it gets, the worse it will be for equities and Bitcoin and crypto. But that's just one part of the equation. We also have AI, and the elders have been debating about AI for a long time, and some say that it will be heaven on earth. Like everybody will just receive this universal income as robots do the job for us, and large language models create what white collars create, and robotic platforms such as Optimus by Tesla and some others, I don't remember the names of right off the bat, will figure the manual labor for us. And I've spent some of my time studying history as a hobby, and my areas of expertise, so to speak, are late Rome, just after Marcus Aurelius, Russian Revolution, end of the 19th century and first half of the 20th century in Russia, Egypt, just a bit, and what else? And the States. And what I could say is that unless AI manages to somehow transform human as a species, maybe through some totally voluntary gene manipulation, this is not going to produce heaven on earth. Actually, it will produce another massive redistribution of power and wealth to the few from the many. And these few will create new economic / political systems that will be installed for some time until the next revolutionary technology arrives. So guess which side are you on? You in particular right now. So that's a bit of a historical joke. And what we see here now, or maybe it's not a joke, NVIDIA is starting to sell off finally. Here we can see these classic head and shoulders formation, and on Friday we're seeing this. An immediate effect of AI that some people are pointing out is a possible suppression of economic behavior, consumer behavior in the economy of the States, Europe, and maybe China, because it's very developed there as well. So what does it create in reality? In reality, people armed with large language models, be it IT professionals or content creators or writers or office workers at large, can produce magnitudes more work than people who are not armed with AI. So what's happening now? Hiring is slowing, layoffs are happening, and these white-collar workers, I'm not talking about robots, I think it will take much more time to implement them in reality. These white-collar workers who are critical to the knowledge economy are being suppressed, are being removed from the economy because hiring slows. Not being removed is not the correct word, because it obviously is just slowing of growth, but the markets are forward looking. So that's another factor that could be a real fundamental factor, not related to headlines, that's happening in the market. And the first very important factor is private credit. So we saw that the situation there is quite drastic. Big companies, not like big, ultra big, mega companies such as BlackRock and JP Morgan are suppressing withdrawals from their private credit funds, and it's getting worse. And I will analyze this topic more thoroughly, because like each probably quite significant topic, it's being I wouldn't say just being put under the rug, but it's being understudied because it doesn't sound interesting enough. It's not the war, it's not AI, because it's interesting too. And it's not high oil prices or Federal Reserve, because these are being watched very, very precisely, and you get a variety of opinions there. And studies from very legitimate people and institutions. But this private credit situation, for me personally, is a bit like the subprime situation back in the day, because subprime, it sounds weird, nothing too interesting, you can't sell it to the public, so what's the reason of digging there? Some people with the how do they call them? In the movie The Big Short, Michael Burry was displayed as neuroatypical or something like that. I think they call these people this way these days. It's a joke. Like, only people who are really dedicated to the cause will research that and point that out, and maybe they are out there, but they're just not seen at the moment. So these are three factors that are very real, are influencing the actual economy as the war drags on, and it was shifting attention from these three deep fundamental factors. Obviously, the oil price is tied to the war, but as we can see, despite the old statements, the peaceful statements, the price of oil continues to be high. So that's the important thing, and we'll see if should Bitcoin retrace here and get sucked back into this uptrend. It could develop as a proper uptrend, but if it is not, it will stay just like this, or maybe test this line, and sooner or later it will succumb and retreat further back down. And here we could look actually at the weekly. This is the hourly. As you can see, there was a bounce, so maybe it's noticeable on the hourly, so maybe some news will become visible soon, but who knows. The weekly is more important, and here you can see that it doesn't look too good, you know. It's this weekly base is shorter, this is longer, and there is way more trading here. And from a strategic perspective, a test of 60,000 is quite likely, actually, from a pure technical perspective. And God only knows how low can we go from there. So yeah, that's for the Bitcoin. The rest of the space is highly correlated, so let's proceed with other coins. As you can see, nothing too different here. There are few standouts, and I will continue to point out Hyperliquid. Here you can see on the daily how messy the chart of the on-chain, the biggest on-chain exchange, and probably the sole leader of the space. Looks like it's about to continue to be this way. How wide it was and how tight and orderly it has become in the recent weeks. So there is institutional presence there, that's for sure. It's obviously it's very wide, but it's getting less wider when it consolidates, so volatility there contracts. But this is a good looking chart. And obviously there are other things that should happen here, like this declining 200-day moving average should flatten and go up. 50-day moving average should go above the 200-day moving average. But sometimes these revolutionary stocks or tokens, in this case, they just blast off. So that makes them difficult to accumulate. You gotta be willing to bend the rules of trend following a bit for these ones. When you really understand, and I'm talking to myself here, obviously, the theme, you have to be able to discount some of the strictness of entry tactics and but not risk management. So you gotta become creative with the entry, but not risk management, to get a position in a potentially revolutionary situation that is hyper liquid. And it is a revolutionary situation because the world at large and developed economies firstly have evolved beyond the point where regulations are useful. A very characteristic, I'm referring to my historical expertise once again, and I'm putting it into quotes here. One thing I'm 100% sure, one of the few things that I'm 100% sure in this regard is that late stage structures, big structures such as societies, governments, state conglomerates, when as closer they move to some transformation, a big transformation, such as a revolution, big war, new ideology, new religion, new societal structure, the more extensive regulation becomes. And that's taxation as well. Tax codexes of late empires. Late empire is a bit of an overused word now. But it's very true. The closer these megastructures are to this stage, the worse it gets on the side of bureaucracy and taxation. And today we also have AML and KYC, and it's a mix of bureaucracy and taxation, so it's in between. But these exchanges, they just reset the whole thing. Like, they just allow somebody, a human being or an entity, a legal entity, or even illegal entity, to just connect their wallet and trade, and they are hyperliquid firsthand, is consuming large amounts of trading volume. I've said it before, I will repeat, and it's probably bigger now, but few weeks ago, 2% of world silver was traded on hyperliquid, and it's still relatively unknown, with the very few exceptions in the finance world. So this is the revolution of today. Obviously, from a moral and political standpoint, some bad actors are trading there too, like insiders. I really doubt that some criminal entities like organized crime is very interested in trading, but who knows, maybe they have trading divisions as well. But at the same time, lots of people and potentially organizations, because it's in the gray zone now, and it most likely it will be legally adopted by some jurisdictions, are using this to get exposure to the markets without the excruciating procedure of getting cleared by the broker to get access. So that's why it's so strong, and that's why we will see many more entry points, buy points in this token. And the one thing I should point out too is that it seems like it was relatively fairly distributed, because there is a bad guy in the room, and no, it's not Aztec, it's Esther. And here we can see the bad result, and this is right now it's 100% obvious. This is a heavily manipulated chart. Like, it's somebody. My idea here is making it look like a consolidation to attract liquidity from breakout traders and distributing in it. I was in starting here and got burned quite a bit, so I'm staying outside. It doesn't look like it has changed character too much. It looks even more heavily manipulated now, because I've never seen such charts. It's like a desk. Is just manually setting up the price each exact moment at a time. And every once in a while, somebody comes in and says, guys, we have to cash out this amount right now. And that's what's happening here. But we'll see. With some time, it could repair itself and start looking like a real chart. But with what's happening in the world of big politics and big corporations of the states right now, I think it will take some time. So Hyperliquid is the go-to name right now. What else? I was pointing out this privacy theme, and I was playing with Aztec a bit, and I still like the idea. The whole idea of privacy in the coin space is that each transaction leaves trace in Bitcoin and Ethereum and most of other protocols, but in some of them it doesn't. And it solves a big problem that is arising for the space, is the quote-unquote adoption that some people were cheering, but in reality you can't really cheer any mass adoption of any asset, because the more participants there are in the market, the less alpha it has, the less capability to produce sustained moves. And that's exactly what's happening in Bitcoin right now. Lots of very competitive people and organizations are affecting the price. And the governments are affecting the price as well. They have their own interests, and they are driven by interests far beyond considerations of a hedge fund or even groups of traders. So these guys, like Aztec, are potentially solving this problem, and in a manner that could be balanced, actually. Balanced between implementing some reasonable level of KYC, AML, and traceability of transactions, and some maybe unreasonable levels of it, because some coins are just like XMR, the first one in the space, are supposedly 100% untraceable, and you can't find any ends and tails of the transaction. But Aztec can disclose some information voluntarily. I mean, the user can disclose some information to the regulator when there is a supposed legitimate request, not mindless monitoring and control, just legitimate concern that should be mitigated. So this is one. And the other one is Midnight Protocol, from the creators of Cardano. Where is it? It's one of the stronger ones today, supposedly. Yeah, here it is. So what's happening here, this is an Aztec competitor, and it's more mature, and guys who have created Cardano are behind it. So, and they are getting some good adoption. So they have partnerships in the UK with some real banks, and it's looking really good today, especially if you take into consideration what's happening now. And you can see how sometimes these trend lines work, right? Like it's a bit of a triple bottom, not even, but still worked very nice. And notice the volume here. Like the volume is just huge, is being accumulated. No creative buy points though, and this is a characteristic of this market, because it's getting suppressed, it's getting some pressure all the time, so it's difficult to get in. But I'm teaching myself to actually play these supports every once in a while, because you can trade them with really little risk, and they are not that obvious. But this is one of the things I want to become proficient during this year. Apart from that, there are not so many things to point out. We'll be wrapping up with the coin, but before that I will show you USDT dominance. So once again, it's one of the healthiest looking charts in the market. If it was a stock or a token, I would be probably considering it here. It should maybe build a little flag here and go further to the upside, but it's a bit concerning too, and it reflects this indecision in the market that is still largely there, even with my remarks about Friday. it's too close to the 50-day, and when something is close to the 50-day, that means that there is indecision on the institutional side, because 50-day is widely regarded as an institutional benchmark, and assets should find support around the 50-day, and it's just an indicator built of a large group of other traded assets, so it resembles each one of them a bit, and it shows some patterns of behavior similar to each one of them, but it's less relevant in regards to its relations with the 50-day, because it's a group, not a single asset. But as you can see, it dominates the willingness of money, the indicator that's displaying the willingness of money to look for a safe haven is strong again, and it has breached this downtrend line, so that is important too. With that being said, let's take a look at the stocks. The most important thing in the world of stocks is that just as Bitcoin, it is finally breaking down. This rounding top here in QQQ, the Nasdaq, has finally resolved itself to the downside, and close was one of the worst closes in weeks and maybe even months, because now it's a clear downtrend, and there is a way to go. There are some psychological points here to undercut and maybe rally a bit, but once again, there is way to go till the next important support index-wise. And it's not chop anymore. For a long time, we saw a clean directional move. This is a minor consolidation, August 25. It could provide some support, especially if we see some news. But as I've said, the fundamental factors that I have not mentioned in the beginning of this presentation are in a dire need of a technical repricement. So the price should change, and a new theme in the market should emerge. And I cannot find any new themes in stocks. Potential long ideas driven by relative strength. It's almost oil and gas. I did not screen 100% of the names that I do. I will do that tomorrow, but so far it doesn't look that the market is sure about the next theme here. What else is important? Volatility index is still inside the rounding bottom here, so no peaks. And maybe we will see these peaks in the coming weeks. So something will happen. Maybe it shouldn't be maybe even news driven at this point. As I've said, it's the absence of realistic news, of the news one could trust, that's driving this decline, and that's why the market is probably remembering about these fundamental factors. So we could see in my perception, with a very high probability, we could see a test of these peaks in some time. Not necessarily next week, but next few weeks, 1 to 2 months maybe. And that, of course, will correlate with further correction in the stocks. As I've said, not much to be said about stocks, but everything here looks quite weak. Some of them are more resilient than others, but you can see how Amazon, Google, we will see, and Microsoft are very weak. These core drivers of the market in the States. And also AI stocks, remember we took a quick look at Nvidia. Most of them are now AI companies, so maybe that tells you something as well about this whole AI theme. As you can see, everything is very, very weak. And even Intel, that is strong in the news related to the government support, and that's just let that sink in, government support of a large corporation, and almost nationalization in the States. Another zeitgeist there. Meta, very weak. Microsoft, exceptionally weak. MicroStrategy, finally, a very good short opportunity was here, and maybe still is, because if the market will go further down, I mean Bitcoin market, this stock will produce good moves. And in my humble opinion, these treasury companies, one day they will be remembered just like special purpose acquisition vehicles today. A very I don't even have diplomatic words for this, to be honest, about this whole business idea to help broad market get exposure to crypto and provide a vehicle for it. It's just, I don't know, it won't work. It won't work. And these companies, they are very, very low-hanging fruits for short sellers with capital now, and that could be a factor in the world of coin, because it's still not too large, and with proper amounts of capital you can put some definite pressure on it and at least accelerate it as it goes. Micron is still holding this support, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. Netflix is an interesting development, and as I've said, not a fan of the company. Nvidia, we have discussed. Oracle, some of these lows could be taken out after some time, and SanDisk is a bit up. So Micron and SanDisk, something is definitely happening there, and maybe they could be still relevant in the next cycle after this correction. And this is a good example of the good scenario and the bad scenario. Like, the bad scenario is obviously in play. As you can see, it's hugging the downtrend line. We're talking about Tesla now. And this also reflects, in my opinion, skepticism about this whole robotic humanoid robots play, because it will be way more difficult to put into work, and in my opinion, human labor will become way more cheaper in the world of tomorrow, because there are lots of humans, even with a declining democracy. And so the labor of humans will be cheaper than the labor of robots for quite some time. And don't even don't discount the economic factors. These companies, robotic companies, they could do something, but in good economic conditions, and it seems like it's not the case right now and in a foreseeable future. Oh, an honorable mention is dollar strength, like for all the assets. Despite the fragmentation of the global system, dollar is the go-to asset where you hide from bad things. Despite all efforts of the current administration, dollar will stay like this, and it's another historical pattern. Currencies live their own life. And that's why, for example, dollar sign is actually peso, because the sign of the peso outlived Spanish Empire. And like pound was a global currency way longer than British Empire was relevant as a global econopolitical player. And like it or not, but dollar is getting stronger, because of the demand, just like USDT dominance chart. It says strength, and it says that there is a demand for safety here. So, and the stronger the dollar, the weaker the crypto. This is just how it works. What else? One of the last confirmations to this, the difficulty in the economy, is 10-year yields. Should it break out from this downtrend, we will see that the market is starting to really price in economic difficulties down the line. It's one of the few indicators that did not, or maybe in my watch list, maybe the only indicator, with the exception of volatility, like 2 indicators that are to conclude the bear market and bad economy for some time. Currencies are weak, and metals, commodities are strong. So that's an anti-inflation hedge, in my opinion, because we should see the extent of trouble in the economy, because silver and copper are industrial metals, and they will chop, because the higher inflation is, the more these metals appreciate, and commodities overall. But at the same time, weak economy could suppress the demand for copper and silver, while once again inflation could support gold prices. But at the same time, liquidations in funds, when a big market participant gets margin called, they have to sell everything. So that's why there are no safe havens mostly during market drawdowns. Everything, sooner or later, everything starts to correct, or at least become very volatile because of these liquidations. So that is the counterforce. Inflation will be supporting the price of gold, but potential liquidations, will be suppressing it. So it could chop, just like the markets did since October. So on the actionable side here, obviously further shorts, further breakdowns, like recent breakdowns. Bitcoin is a recent breakdown. Nvidia, in my opinion, is probably the cleanest breakdown right now, and it still has to maybe consolidate around here and go further back. But once again, execution is key now, and it's so easy to get chopped. I'm repeating this word again and again in conditions like this, because maybe the mega headline will be squeezed out there, and maybe the market will bounce, and maybe it will take some time before it starts to really price in any of the fundamental factors I've mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, like higher rates for longer, AI, and the third one was private credit. So maybe it will chop around before finally going further down. And on the long side, obviously hyperliquid, and it's in the world of token. Hyperliquid is the first one, and Night Protocol is the strongest right now. It's just immensely strong. Look how it went up here, and maybe there was a buy point here, like 2 buy points here. The third support at this trend line, and a small volatility contraction around here. But you have to become like a sniper level execution master, because not only these things happen fast, but they also happen at difficult times. Like when you sleep or when you rest, you know, like maybe you should have. I'm just trying to convince myself to type in orders more frequently and leave the platform and not try to rely on alerts, because you can't stay glued to the screen 24/7. So here are the takeaways. Still very uncertain, with a huge probability of further pressure into the market, and with very isolated pockets of resilience, mostly in the token space, in the coin space. Well, that's it for today. Bye.